Good. How you doing, Jonelle?
I'm good, thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me on and doing this. My dad was a West Point grad, so I was an Army brat, and I was born in Frankfurt, Germany, and we lived there for I think it was like 2 years, and then we moved back to the States. And my brother was born in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and we moved to Massachusetts, Boston. And then when I was 5, we landed in Poconos, Pennsylvania area, so northeast Pennsylvania. Right now, I'm in North Carolina by the beach area, and I took a week, went down. The first place I looked at, I fell in love with, so I rented it, and then a month later, I moved down there, and I didn't know anybody. I was disabled, and I didn't have I can't work, but it was honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I absolutely love it here. I've never looked back. I couldn't have kids because of my health issues,
Yeah.
so which they started at when I was 16. So I never had children, but my boyfriend's son, they just have a new baby, and she's 4 months old, and we've been babysitting her 3 times a week, and I absolutely love it. I used to so I used to have these silent cries, I call them, and I just would cry because I just wanted my own family so
Yeah.
terribly,
Yeah.
and I just knew it wasn't ever in my cards. And so when we got together, and his son got married last year, and then last January they told us that they were pregnant. My reaction, they said they wish they recorded it. I couldn't control, I was crying and happy and laughing and everything at once, but I was just so happy and thankful that I would get to experience kind of raising a
Yeah.
child. So
Yeah.
like a lot of people, like our neighbors and stuff, I didn't tell them for the longest time that I was disabled or have my health issues. And when I would have the issues, they just wouldn't see me, so they just
Yeah.
didn't think much of it. And when I first became permanently disabled when I was in my 20s. And when it first happened, you don't know how, there's no playbook on how to deal with this, what to do. So you listen to all your doctors, you take everything they tell you to do, you do everything they tell you to do. And I learned over time, sometimes less is more. And
Hmm.
also, like, people didn't want to hear it, they kind of got tired of it. And so I went from telling everybody to telling nobody. And I think, finally, in the last few years, I've kind of found a balance,
Yeah.
I feel if it's appropriate, I'll share it, but it's not
Yeah.
usually something I lead with,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I don't want people to just think, oh, she's disabled. When I decided to advocate 8 years ago, uh, the first thing I had to get over some things. Like, first of all, I'm putting my life out to the public, so they're going to know everything about you. They're going to learn everything about you. And, everybody has an opinion. And the first thing I did is I went on all my social media accounts and took off anything that had to do with politics and religion, because I just was like, I want them to focus on my advocating, and when I'm talking about for this, then something else. Because I'll tell you, a few years ago, we so on the weekends we go down to the beach, and we were out in the boat, and I didn't know it was. This is when Donald Trump was president, and we didn't know that there was a flotilla going on. And so when we got out there, I live streamed it on Facebook, just because it was just like a good atmosphere. Everybody was happy. There was flags everywhere. It was just like, I was thinking more pro America than
Yeah.
pro anything else. And like I don't know, there's 60 people from the chronic pain community that put on there, I am blocking you, and anything you support going forward, I am not going to follow. And I was just so shocked. So I just was like, okay, I knew better, but I learned my lesson. Yeah, so I'm really careful kind of what I put out in that sense.
Yeah.
But I try to be kind of an open book otherwise, because, unless if you, people just won't get it unless if they have a friend or family, or if they deal with it themselves. But I try to be open and transparent as I can, and share the things that I'm going through, because especially now that I've I had gained a voice, and I've met so many people within this community, and doctors and legislators and stuff like that. I feel like it's important that they know that I go through these things, and I think a lot of time, because I don't always show that side of me when I'm advocating, people tend to think, oh, well, she doesn't deal with that stuff, you know what I mean, or she doesn't have that stuff, or people have even questioned if I actually have my illnesses or not, and that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, especially when it's from your own community. But I have to say, the majority of people are amazing,
Yeah.
loving, and honestly, it's like my second family, the online community, because, um, a lot of family members and friends. Well, first of all, when I first became disabled, I was in my 20s, and like my friends just didn't understand. Everybody's going out, traveling, doing stuff, and suddenly, I mean, I went from just graduating from college. I played field hockey for Ohio State University, and I also played on the United States field hockey team. And I went from that within like 2-3 years to completely disabled, and it was such a shock to me. Family and friends, like, they just didn't, especially because you can't see it, so they didn't
Yeah.
understand. And a lot of the stuff I have wasn't diagnosed until later on, and I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't know what exactly. So it was difficult. So, like, I would have a date night with friends, with my girlfriends, and I'd have to cancel suddenly, and they eventually thought either I didn't want to hang out with them or I didn't like them anymore. So I lost pretty much all of my friends, and I know so many people could relate to that. And then the other thing is my family members, they didn't understand it either. Like, they always saw me, I was like an adrenaline junkie, and I was so active, and going from that to like being a hermit basically, and staying inside and not doing anything, not being able to do things. It was so frustrating because I was dealing with this personally, but then for your family members, especially like with my medications and stuff, like them thinking that you're like an addict or something on top of it. So that was really hard. A lot of my family now, they understand, but uh, I don't have like, in my personal life, I don't have a ton of friends because I can't go out. But that's why advocating became such an amazing thing in the online community, because they do understand. I could talk to them always. And yeah, it was kind of like, it saved me a little bit because I was in a big depression before that. When I was 16 years old, it was June 3rd, 1994. And it was a Friday, and I was at softball practice, and it was over. I stopped to get gas. I was in my Volkswagen, I think it was an 81 Rabbit convertible, white with a black top. I loved that car. And I was driving home on a straightaway. It was a 45 or 55 mile an hour place. And I stopped to make a left hand turn. And there was like 2 or 3 cars coming the other way. And that was it. All I remember is I was listening to Bob Marley, Three Little Birds, singing along, and like that's it. And you know, the next thing I kind of remember, it was like almost, I didn't know if I was in a dream or what, but I remember hearing people say, "We're cutting her seatbelt, and can we get her legs out?" And I moved them, I guess, and that was it. And then the next thing I remember is like I thought I was like in a war because I could hear like a helicopter and stuff like that, and it looked. I this is what I saw. I'm sure it wasn't like this, but men in camouflage around me, and like I saw like we were going through a field, and I had my hand over whatever I was on, and like feeling the grass, and then being put in there, and then I don't remember anything again. And then the next time I woke up, I was in the hospital. And so I was life flighted, obviously. So somebody hit me from the back. They were going 55 miles an hour. There was the people on, coming the other way stopped. They were looking for me in the fields because my car was like thrown 150 yards forward. it spun into oncoming traffic, and then I ended in the berm facing, I did a whole 360 and then facing again the direction we were going. And so like I had the top down, and yeah, a son and his kid were like looking in the fields for me, and they realized I was slumped over in my car. And then also a guy that I went to high school with, he was like a few cars behind, and he was on the what is it, like the medic team, you know, like a voluntary firefighter or voluntary like EMC or something.
Yeah, like
Anyway, he came
on.
over. Yeah. I guess I wasn't breathing, and he put like my neck up straight, and I guess because I got like air suddenly, I punched him and I broke his nose. And like I don't remember any of that, and like I found out afterwards. But and yeah, so it was just like, so I was life flighted. And the next day, so my dad just bought like this beautiful 96-acre farm and property, and I was supposed to have like 50 kids over, and we were going to go camping in the mountains, like on our property. So like, you know, they saw my accident on TV, and I think at the time they said I was dead. So like all my friends were like flipping out and everything like that. But so yeah, when I got to the hospital, you know, everything was kind of like like I remember a machine was over me taking pictures at one point, but like the first time I felt or like anything was when we were going over the connectors from the floor onto the elevator, and like hitting that, and like it was like bam, and suddenly I felt my whole like my neck just felt like knives going into my neck and stuff like that, and I screamed, and then I guess I passed out from the pain. And the next thing I woke up was to my parents next to me, you know, crying and stuff. So and I was in the hospital, I can't remember now if it was 6 or 9 days, but I broke my C3 and C4 vertebrae. The week after, I was supposed to play in the Junior Olympics for field hockey, so I was in really good shape. And the doctor said that's probably why I was alive, because of how good of shape I was in, because I was training for that. So yeah, that was that experience. And honestly, like, you know, that was going into the summer. My school didn't make me like finish school or anything like that, but I felt so lonely that summer because like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't play sports. I couldn't travel. I couldn't go anywhere. And like I was allowed to walk, you know, and kind of like swim around. And I wore it's called a 2-post brace, and it was a permanent brace that was like front like this and in the back. And the worst thing about that is I remember, so like your head kind of sits on it, and my ears would hurt so bad, like right in here in my jaw. And that was like the worst pain. And I would break out really bad from where the pads sat on me. But I had to wear that for a few months. And then, oh, and this is funny. So my dad, the surgeon, he wanted to put a halo on me. And my dad was like, you know, and that's where they go into here and stuff like that. And he was like, you know, my daughter, she's like the most boring girl. She doesn't do anything. You know, she's just going to sit at home. Well, that's like the opposite of me. But he didn't want me to have to get that. So they decided to put that 2-post brace on me. And I healed naturally. But, you know, I actually came back. I was able to play sports again within about a year. I helped coach field hockey. I was a goalie, so I helped coach the goalies. And like that, what was it? That, I think it was February or March, I started playing for the United States field hockey team again. And like, I just kind of jumped in and got into that. I have to say though, there was like this fear in me suddenly. And you don't have, like when you play sports, you like, all right, a lot of it is mental, you know, physically you work out and you prepare, but mentally it's really big. And fear is one thing that you cannot have, because if you like think about anything, if you like stop, or, you know, you're not just like reacting. And that's the difference between a game, you know? So what I started to fear though, when like people would hit into me, and you know, and like I had to have to dive and do stuff like that. So I kind of had to really work on that part of me to kind of get over it. And I have to say, the whole thing with playing sports and being an athlete and playing with a team, it helped me so much get through a lot of what I go through right now with my disabilities and like with advocating, because, you know, I had to push through a lot, you know, and um, I had to really talk myself up constantly and like talk myself out of things or like try to figure things out. And when you're suddenly alone, you know, all that stuff really comes into play. It's important to have that. So I'm thankful that I had all those uh, tools, I guess, for my toolbox. So that was my first accident. I was in a second accident when it was 2003. So I was 25, I think. And I already graduated from college, and I was on my first job. I worked undercover as a private law enforcement person. So I had to, my first job was I worked at a parchment paper factory in Ohio, and I had to find out what was going on. And they couldn't tell me because it was entrapment. So over 6 months, I figured out that three guys on the third shift raped this woman. And, you know, like, the reason why I wanted to do this type of job is because I really wanted to go into the FBI or the CIA or, you know, or secret police or something like that. But I found out because of my neck issues. So after I broke it and stuff like that, years down the road, I think from like working out, having heavy weights on my shoulders and stuff, and just getting, you know, you get injuries when you play sports. I started to develop degenerative disc disease and, you know, issues. And so in 2003, I was working at JP Morgan Chase, and it was a Friday evening, and I went out to have a few drinks with my friends, and I wanted to leave. So I got a ride with, there's four people, and we were in an SUV, and we got T-boned on the way home. And I don't remember, I kind of remember it. Like, I didn't remember immediately, but I kind of remembered after that, like hitting the person's head next to me and being out. And I woke up in the hospital to like an IV drip and everything. And I was in shock. I wanted to get out of there. Like, I didn't, you know, I couldn't like realize everything that was going on. They released me. My roommate came and picked me up. And Saturday morning I woke up and like I had this like dull ache in my neck, and my entire left arm and hand were completely paralyzed. No feeling at all. It was just like they were invisible and like hanging there. And I kept like throwing my arm up and stuff like that. And I'm like, is this real? Like, I couldn't understand it all. You know, is this real?
Yeah.
So I didn't, you know, I'm younger, and I don't know. I guess you think you're invincible, kind of.
Yeah.
So I went to my primary care on Monday, and he's like, sweetheart, you need to go see a neurosurgeon. And like, I'm thinking they should have got me in immediately now that I knew what happened. But so Wednesday, I saw a neurosurgeon. Within 30 minutes, they had me in surgery. And I broke my C4 and 5 vertebrae, and it was impinging on my spinal column. So I was paralyzed. And my doctor didn't tell me at the time, but when I was like when I was waking up, he was in front of me, and he's like, Jonelle, he's like, he held my arm up and he's like, here, hold this up. And he like released it, and then I could. And he started to cry. So I started to cry because I didn't know why he was crying, you know, and I didn't understand. But he told me later on that like I had like, you know, like a 5% chance of getting my arm back and stuff like that. And like that was just the beginning of like 2.5 years of intense physical therapy to get full rotation and everything back. And I believe it's like an inch or half inch you grow back per year, not year, it has to be per month. And eventually, like, you know, I have a pretty good feeling, but it's like really spotty. But I think that's what kind of started the other health issues, like the diseases. So like soon after that, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and that was like in a period of time where they thought fibromyalgia was in your head. So like they didn't know what it was, so they said it was fibro, which I really do have, but like I would never tell any doctors like that I would see, because I, you know, I didn't want them to like look at me like as a jerk. That's also when I started taking medications. like full time, like pain medicines, muscle relaxers, and everything like that, because like I was having all these spasms and everything like that, and it was really hard, you know, to like I was just trying to like wrap my head around all this that happened. And so they fused my neck, and like it was a good fusion. But you know, once you get one fusion, so how it was explained to me is like, say you're on a stretcher and one person goes away, so you have three people holding it up. That's what it's like on your discs above and below where you had it fused. So like once you have one fusion, most likely you're going to have to get more. So if a doctor is saying you need neck surgery, be very careful with that. And like, unless you're paralyzed or becoming paralyzed,
Yeah.
I would try everything else that you can before you do that. But so from there on, I would have a total of 5 neck surgeries. So you know, I'd have my 4, 5, 5, 6, my 5, 6. I had it done, and then I had an accident, and the fusion wasn't good, and like so they had to redo it like a month later. And then my last one, so in 2010 I had my fusion, my C6-7, and I don't know why I did this, but I wanted to take Kyokushin karate, which is like the most lethal form of, I think, Japanese karate, Chinese or Japanese. Anyway, so this 18-year-old, we are like pretending we are in a knife fight. And if you're in a knife fight, so your legs would get swept out and you would fall a certain way. So this kid like swiped my legs like 9 times, but that 10th time I just wasn't paying attention. And when he did it, my neck went like that, like really quick, like, and I knew something was wrong. I was like laying on the ground, and I immediately started crying. And my sensei's like I didn't tell him that I had any health issues. And he's like, are you okay? Are you okay? Come on, get up. I'm like, no, I'm going to stay here for a few minutes. And I told him what happened. He's like, are you kidding me? Why are you here? You know? And it's just like how I've always been. And so I finally got up. I went home, and my neurosurgeon was in Washington, D.C. at Johns Hopkins. And so like, I don't know, 2 months later, I went home to visit my dad, and I went and saw my neurosurgeon, and like, he was like, Jonelle, how in the world did you break your fusion? He's an older surgeon, and he's like, I've never had a patient break their fusion. And I told him, and he was just like, he rolled his eyes, and he's like, I hope you learned from this. And I did. I like never did something so stupid again. The biggest thing I had a hard time doing is saying no. You know, like whether it was working out, like I always felt like I should do another, you know, rep or another like set or rep, or that I should put heavier weights on, or, you know, like doing that, like taking karate and just doing stupid stuff. So I kind of like learned a huge lesson, just because this was serious. Like this would change my life at that point. And at that point, I only had I had PTSD from that car accidents, but I had Raynaud's disease, which is in my hands, and then I had fibromyalgia. But like around 2009, I started noticing my hand when I woke up. My left hand would be like purplish, pinkish, and swollen, and like it would feel like fire on the inside, but really ice cold to touch. And then a few months later, it went to my other side. And like I kept telling my doctors, something's wrong. And they do MRIs, and they're like, your neck is fine. But I'm like, something's wrong. And honestly, so that was 2009. When I moved to North Carolina in 2014, I finally got in to see a new doctor in 2015. It was March 2015. And immediately he knew. He's like, you have CRPS. And I'm like, what? What is that?
Yeah.
It's like, don't go home and don't Google it. Well, that's like a dumb thing. Of course I'm going to go home and Google it. Well, I read suicide disease.
Yeah.
Most painful. And I was freaking out. Our barometer, our temperature is off, you know? It's so like, and like, I've had a few good years actually with CRPS where it was kind of controlled, but in September I went, the one thing I haven't given up is deep sea fishing. I love it. And I was stung by a jellyfish, and it was like that week there was over 200 people that were stung by these jellyfish, but it was a different type of jellyfish that nobody's seen in our area before. Anyway, I was stung by it, and I didn't even realize. And like within 15 minutes, I was head to toe in hives, and like then my throat was closing up, and like I didn't want to go to the hospital because when I started having seizures, they treated me. They treated me like an addict. So I was like,
Yeah.
I am not going to the hospital. And like my boyfriend's like, Jonelle, I'm taking you to urgent care. So we went to urgent care. As soon as I got there, my throat closed up. So thankful I went. They sent me to the emergency room. And honestly, like, I have to say, this was the hospital that treated me terribly, but this time they saved my life. And I was so thankful. Like, I mean, and I think because of it was such an emergency, like going in, when you see all the doctors and nurses come around you immediately and like scared,
Yeah.
it's so surreal because you're like, oh my God, is this
Yeah.
happening to me? And like I was awake and everything, but I could feel what was going on, and I was freaking out too. But they were amazing to me, and and then once everything settled down, it took a few hours to kind of get me to where my throat wasn't closing up,
Like,
like it would go up and down. Yeah. And then afterwards, like the nurse came in and was like, so she started looking at my stuff, and seeing like all the pain meds I'm on and everything like that. And she was like, well, um, she was like, when people come in with what just you came in with, of course we're worried about you guys. But when people come in complaining of pain or whatever, it gets frustrating. And I just kind of like didn't say anything. I mean, I, I just almost died for years when I've advocated. You never talk about the actual hospital or the doctor or whatever. And I don't believe that anymore. Even, I mean, I advocate big time for doctors, but um, I think we need to start calling them out because uh, they're getting away with so much, and there's people dying now because of this,
mhm.
and it's like it's I'm not cool with that anymore.
Mm.
So I will absolutely say what is going on if I have to, because
Yeah.
but look, I'm just thankful that they saved my life. But I have to say though, 2 years prior to that, I lost my doctor. He the state medical board took his license, which was ridiculous. And I'd really love to talk to you about that if we get time.
Yeah.
But so I had to go off all my meds because like I didn't have a doctor suddenly. And I called like over 15 doctors in North Carolina, and nobody would take me. Everybody said your case is too complicated. So, and this was the second time I've had a forced taper like this, and I developed seizures. And the first seizure I had, my boyfriend called the EMTs. He didn't know what was going on with me, and when they came, because of my health issues, even though I wasn't on stuff, they immediately gave me 2 rounds of Narcan. And like when I wasn't coming out of it, they realized there was something seriously wrong,
Oh.
Yeah. And then my second seizure that I had, like he didn't realize that I didn't have to go to the hospital yet. And I didn't either because it was just so new, a new health issue. You don't know what's going on. And the second time they did, it was like the same thing again. They didn't give me Narcan that time because he wouldn't allow them, but they treated me horribly. And it's just like when that happens, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. I was scared. I didn't really have memory at the time, but like I was told what happened, and when I did come about like in the hospital, I mean, I could hear like the nurses out there saying, oh, I can't stand effing addicts and blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, I just sat there and cried. And this was when COVID got really big. It was April 2020. So nobody could come in, no family or friends could come in. And I was just there alone. And
Oh, I'm so.
I was just waiting for it. It sucked. And you know what? There's so many people that go through this, and it's just terrible.
I don't hear Raynaud's disease very much. Can you just briefly talk about what that is?
Yeah. So it's in my hands. And honestly, sometimes I don't know the difference between CRPS or Raynaud's. So they kind of like overlap. But what it is basically is usually you'll know if you have it, like if you're red all around and white at the knuckles, kind of.
Oh,
But
okay.
see, it kind of could look like CRPS too. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Your capillaries and stuff like that are just small, I guess, at this point or whatever, and they're not working right. But I think there's like a lot of layover with fibromyalgia, CRPS, and Raynaud's.
Oh,
Arachnoiditis,
yeah.
yeah, or AA. And actually, Dr. Forrest Tennant is like, if you have this, uh, reach out to him, read his stuff. He's from California.
Who's that?
Dr. Forrest Tennant. So I met him in 2017 or 16, I can't remember. And he focuses on what does he call it? Individuals with autoimmune diseases, CRPS, AA, and stuff like that, but mostly AA. So anyway, he's like, his license was taken by the state medical board. I think it was 2017, and you know, I think a lot of people really kind of, that's when people, I think, started to realize, okay, this is not a joke. And especially after the 2016 CDC guidelines on opioids, I think like they realized, okay, they're going after our doctors, and they went after him to make a point, basically. So they took his license, but he's been advocating, he's written books, he's helping people with like diets, and like if they're taking forced tapered off all their meds and stuff like that. He's trying to find ways to find the way for the body to heal itself through natural ways, and I think, I'm sure your wife does this too, but we look for basically anything. I'm always looking to see what's new out there and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
and I know he's coming pretty close. He's having a trial right now with patients, and I'm friends with a few of them, and they're having really good outcomes from it. Like, so, like they're not having to take their pain meds anymore because they don't hurt. I mean, that would be amazing. Suffering, and I think losing hope. When you lose hope, that's kind of what that's like. Because many years ago, I was in the same spot, and I mean, I knew what I was going to do. I had my letter written out, and I haven't actually told a lot of family about it, but like, I kind of like started to set up myself. So like I told myself, okay, if in 10 minutes, and I have really bad ADHD, by the way, but if I told myself in 10 minutes, if I'm still like thinking about this and I'm at this spot, then I'll do it. But like 10 minutes would go by, and like I had to be fair with myself, like I, my head will be somewhere else, or I'd be doing something else. So like I play this game with myself. Like I know I'd wait 10 minutes, wait 10 minutes. And then I started to kind of do the thing where I could not watch anything, like no wars, no like, shoot me up stuff on TV. It had to be all positive. I mean, because like I'd cry over like a Visa commercial. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like,
it's a hypersensitivity even.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it was horrible. And like I was afraid to go out, I was afraid to talk to people. I mean, it was bad. I've never been in such a deep dark depression as those few years, and like I never want to go back. So I kind of always, when I see myself going towards a depression, I kind of do this thing that I set up with myself so I won't go back there, and it's hard. Hats off to you for like being so supportive as a caretaker and taking care of other things. Very rarely do we have somebody else that will step up for us or support us. And I think that's why it's so hard dealing with invisible diseases, because
Um,
um, you know, uh, like that's one of the reasons why my marriage broke down. I mean, like when we met is when I became disabled, and like he just couldn't understand it. I couldn't either. I didn't understand it either, and like it was. It was just, that was a really abusive thing, and I'm sure it would have not been good regardless of it. But like it doesn't help, and so it it takes a big strong will within you to kind of like keep fighting and going. And I think that's why this online community is so important as well.
yeah.
You could be there and support each other. It takes so much energy just to get out of bed. Like you don't even understand that. And like,
Yeah.
they don't, and people don't get that, you
Yeah.
know. I'll tell, I love my boyfriend. I never thought I would meet somebody that would want to be with me because of my
Yeah.
health issues.
Yeah.
And like, uh, I think other friends that are disabled say this too, but I, I hide a lot of um, how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put on a smile, and because you know, he's just not like exactly where you are, and it's but I can't fault him for that because like this is I don't always get it either,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it just makes it a little bit it's another layer that's kind of hard, you know, because and I think it's just me too though, like I'll hide a lot of like how I feel, or I'll push myself even further to the point where I'm just completely like I
Exhausted.
break, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And my heart goes out to you for that. I remember feeling that I can't do something, whatever that is, right? This is too, and maybe that was true, like my limits, right? In terms of my strength, virtue, or I'm praying and I'm not getting something. But I remember God saying kind of to me, if that door's not there, you need to create it. And that starts with a will. And I realized I was not willing to do certain things. And I didn't see that. And so I had to face that about myself of, wow, the reason why that door's not there, let alone to improve upon things. I just wasn't able to even walk through the door, right? It didn't exist. But I worked through that gradually. And as I started becoming more willing and started making progress, then things can get better. So if you have somebody in your life, whether it is a boyfriend or a spouse or a caretaker, whatever the situation is, there's no way that you're not going through a dynamic like this. And it's so often that people aren't talking about it, let alone each other.
Mhm.
So talking about that and talking about it and having that be okay is going to be just such a burden off, and giving that a little bit of mix of grace, a little bit of what can we do that's a little bit more of a willingness, and things can progress.
Communication is so
Yeah.
big, you know, but like
Yeah.
I think also if you're not being honest with yourself or be willing to like kind of stand up for, okay, this is where I'm at right now, like then how could you ask somebody else to kind of do something? But I think it's so beautiful to see the growth that you've had, and like to also say, you know, like to kind of put that ego aside and say, all right, this is my issue right here. I need to work
Yeah.
on me a little bit here. That's amazing. Even with our health issues and stuff like that, like we deserve to have a life, like and an enjoyable life and a happy life. And you know, it's a little harder right now because a lot of people can't find doctors or care, you
Mhm.
know, but that's why it's so important, you know, for you know, advocates and stuff like that to be a cheerleader for others and to realize, you know, um, I always try to lead with compassion and kindness, regardless of how people, whatever they say to me. It could be nasty because a lot of the times they're just having a hard time right now, you know? And instead of like just being mean back to them, you know, I'll kind of like just change it up and I'll just say something nice, you
Yeah.
know, or
Yeah.
just ask them how they're doing. Because sometimes just people want to be know that they're cared for too.
What advocacy have you been involved with, and how far have you taken it?
So, so I first like kind of when I found out I had CRPS, you know, I felt like it was a nail in the coffin, and I didn't know. I knew nobody that had anything close to what I had, especially around my age. I'm 44 now, but this was back in 2014. So I was just like kind of freaking out. I just moved to a new place, you know, And I felt like, well, I can make whatever I want at this place. But, my health issues started to kind of get bad. It's like a roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just kind of getting in a bad spot. And my dog just died too. So it was like I was kind of down. And I started to go online when I was looking up about CRPS and stuff like that. I actually met Barbie Engel with Eye Pain Foundation and several other people that had CRPS. And the first thing I did is I created just an online group on Facebook, but immediately I felt like, you know what, I need to do something to change this stuff. Because when I found out it was incurable and that like there wasn't a lot of like work done for people like
Mm-hmm.
me, I wanted to change that in some way and help. And then so I kind of like I started to get involved with nonprofits and I helped out with that, and then I decided, okay, so that's when the 2016 CDC guidelines came out. Doctors were, I I was starting to meet a lot of people, but I decided how can I get access to the most people and get like the word out about this stuff. And so that's why I was like, well, I'm gonna make a podcast, because. And so what I did is I was doing it was it Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday every week, and it was called Conspiracies Against Wellness. And I would have a doctor on the one day, and then I'd have a patient that had whatever illness on that day, and then on Thursday I'd have like call-ins and stuff like that. So and then I Dr. Klein and I met and we talked and we decided we're going to make a podcast together too. And then I did one for Dr. Margaret Aranda and I did one for Claudia Morandi. And so, but honestly, that was how like I really started meeting a lot of people and getting involved with advocating and really
Mm-hmm.
kind of understanding more of what was going on. But like I I felt like, okay, this is the way is how I'm going to get access and how I'm going to get the word out to the most people. But what I'm finding is I could reach a lot of people that are unhealthy, but it's getting outside of that is so hard. I did it for a few years. And then like 2019, that's when I lost my doctor and I just couldn't do these 4-day weeks of, it's a lot, you know how it is producing, marketing, all of it.
Yeah.
So, and it was just really me doing it. So I couldn't keep up with it. And then when I lost my doctor and my medicines, it was just like I needed to take a break. So I kind of shut everything down. And I was able to find a doctor eventually in another state, um, which is who I go to now. But Dr. Klein and I kind of started talking. And years ago, I wanted to kind of create, a nonprofit that I could do projects underneath of what I wanted to do. And so Dr. Klein and I spoke, and then we created National Pain Council, and that's where we kind of been since. And one of the major projects I'm working on right now is I created a small team, and we are helping anybody that wants to get state legislation within their state passed to protect patients and doctors. And right now we're working on 2 states. I started out doing it. Barbie Engel invited me to come in into that team to create legislation for Arizona, which I did last year. And so I got to learn a lot. And then from that, I was just like, well, I want to help other people do this because legislation, litigation, and sorry, and well, I lost my thought. Legislation, litigation, and there's one other one I can't think right now. But those are the ways of how we're going to be able to fix of what is going on because of you know people took automatically the CDC guidelines as a law, which it isn't, And I think I just want to say this quickly. The other big thing that's going on right now, and I don't know if people know, but the state medical boards, besides the CDC, or I'm sorry, the DEA, the state medical boards are who are putting fear into doctors and who are taking their license. And state medical boards are voted in by the governor of each state. So we need to get buddy buddy with every governor in each state. We need to get an advocate on each state medical board because right now, most of the people on these boards, they don't know anything about pain. Most of them are psychiatrists, psychologists, or just plain doctors that don't understand this. And I feel like a lot of state medical board people go on there because they have like an axe to grind with somebody usually, you know, and we're seeing that with a lot of doctors that have been, you know, that they're going after and they're taking their license or they've tried to take their license. And basically, if you try to take their license, it takes years for one thing. And then also, it's so much money for a doctor. I mean, it completely just ruins them, you know. And then to get it back, you have to take all these classes and you have to spend like $200,000 or something like that to get your license back. It's ridiculous. So I'm really going to start. I want to start doing something about the state medical boards and anybody that wants to help out. My current doctor now, my pain management doctor, a few months ago, the state medical board went after him for. So there's usually three things: either improper note taking, patient note taking, um, prescribing outside their boundaries, or overprescribing. Those are the three things that they'll go after, the state medical boards for doctors.
Mhm.
So they were going after my doctor for improper patient note taking. I went I went to the hearing, and I stood by my doctor, and like they introduced me to the board and stuff like that. Um, he got off with just having to take classes, and thank goodness. Um, but afterwards, on the way, when the state medical board people were walking out, my doctor and we went up to the state medical board person, and we're like, so what kind, do you have like an outline or a guideline or anything that you can give us of what doctors, how they should be doing proper patient note taking? And she's like, oh, well, it's different for each case. Like my mind just blew, and immediately I was like, okay,
Wow.
these state medical boards need guidelines,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I mean, if they're doing it at each case, basically it's whatever they think or say, and
Which is
that's what they're doing in
full of
my doctor.
bias and stigma. And
Yep, and that's terrible.
if people want to become involved with what you're doing or learn more about you, what is the best way to reach you?
Um, well, I'm online on Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Twitter at Jonelle Elgaway,
Okay.
just my name. Or you could contact me at my email, executive director at nationalpaincouncil.org, or you could just jelgaway at gmail.com. I'm kind of pretty much open and everywhere. You could Google me. It's really easy to find my stuff. But yeah, or just DM me. I'm happy to, that's how I meet a lot of people. So
Perfect. So if you guys aren't already following her, be sure that you do. A lot of promising things, I think, are going to be part of your future. You're certainly a pioneer and a leader in an area that is very much needed, and we're just honored to 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 have you. We'd love to continue to work with you in the future, so we'll certainly be in touch.
I'm just a normal, everyday person. And like, I was struggling with how to find doctors for my health issues, what type of medications or therapies or whatever that I could do. So I just started by Googling online, and then meeting other people. Everything that I'm involved with, anybody could do this from their bed or at home or wherever. If you have a cell phone and internet, that's all you need. Like most of the stuff I do, that's how I do it. And I'd wake up in the mornings and like I'd feel like crap, and then I'd start responding to people's questions or getting in touch, working and advocating and stuff like that. And suddenly my mind wasn't on how horrible I felt, and I was thinking about other people. When you help other people, it's like a gift that keeps on giving. You know what I mean? Like like I absolutely love it, and I just want to see other people happy. And when you've helped someone, or help them find a doctor or whatever, I mean, it's just like, it just makes my heart sing, you know what I mean? Because like I know I was in those same spots, and it, I could just relate. So I mean, I'm just a normal, average human being that just wanted to make a difference and try to help people out. And when you first become sick and disabled, I mean, there's no playbook on how to deal with this. And it's not just you, it's everybody around you too, of how they react to you. And it's not easy, and I understand that. But there are so many wonderful advocates and just so many fellow chronic pain patients out there that are willing to talk and listen, and help out. Just reach out to somebody. I mean, you could do it on Facebook groups. There's tons of them out there. Just look up whatever illness you have. You could go on there. I know I work with a lot of the well-known advocates, like, Doctor Patient Forum, Don't Punish Pain Rally. Like, we do a lot of crossovers and stuff like that too. ADPF, National Pain Council, U.S. Pain Foundation, iPain Foundation. All these are amazing places. A lot of these people are sick themselves, and that's how it was created.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, at the end of the day, we all need to come together and help one another out. And just remember to not stay silent. The best thing you could do for yourself is learn how to advocate for yourself first. And I think that's like one of the hardest things to do, especially when you're not well and you're in that position of like either at the hospital or with a doctor and they're not treating you right. It's one of the hardest things to do. Know who to talk to, know how to advocate for yourself. Once you learn that, you have that for life with you. And that goes everywhere with you. So you don't need other people to do that for you, although there are people out there. So, and, I've just gotten to the point where I feel like where I could best help out is I want to start trying to change legislation and bills, because I'm not really sure how else we could fix this.